Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me to talk about them Tennessee Volunteers, let's go, is the man himself, Logan Landers. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's going on, Jeremiah? Another great Monday talking football with you. I know this one's near and dear to your heart, the University of Tennessee Vols. That's a team
Yeah,
you're very familiar with, and I'm ready to give them
absolutely.
a good analysis. I know that.
Yeah, and while I'm not an alum, I grew up in Knoxville in my middle school and high school time, and went to college around that area. I also spent a lot of time down on the UT Strip, where all of the tailgating is occurring. There's the sea of orange coming down over at Neyland Stadium. There's nothing like seeing 100,000 plus strong just cheering and doing their thing in that stadium. And there's nothing like going and seeing that environment. So,
Mm.
one thing that we as a Vols fan, especially in the last, 20 years or so, have come to accept, realize, and move forward with is that we're going to have some new coaches coming in.
Yeah.
And we've had several new coaches come through. We've had some greats, and we've had some ones that we're not so sure about. Bruce Pearl was awesome. I liked a lot of stuff that he did before. But like as we come into this new era and we've got Josh Heupel coming in as the new Tennessee Vols head coach, what I would like to know, Mr. Landers, is what's Tennessee got going on? What is it that they're looking forward to? Who are the key players? And what's Josh Heupel going to do to make this a rebuilding year that can actually put Tennessee Vols back on the map for the SEC?
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, Jeremiah, we did do a Josh Heupel hype video a few weeks ago, just talking about all the great changes he's going to be bringing to this program. But I'll touch on it just a little bit, give a little sneak preview. Man, he is bringing over a tremendous offensive mindset coming over from UCF, and he is hoping to whip that Tennessee Volunteers offense into shape and get them some more points on the board this upcoming year, which is always great to see. And Tennessee as a whole itself, it's going to look pretty new. They're a lot of guys either transfer, go to the NFL draft, or just getting a lot of new recruits coming in. So it's going to be a very different team this upcoming season. But I think that they're going to be just happy to play for a new coach, someone who's ready to, who's going into this team fresh and who's hoping that can get them a few more wins and get them a lot more better offensive production, because that was really what hurt Tennessee last year. They just could not have a consistent offensive performance, especially in the later part of the season. They just could not get anything going. Let's start with the quarterback position. That's the most important part on the offense. And, Harrison Bailey I think it's his time for him to come in, step in, and have his breakout year finally, because we've talked about him for what feels like forever now, thinking, man, is it his time? Is he ready to come in here at Tennessee and really get things going? And he had a few good spurts last year. He really did. He threw for 578 yards, completed 71% of his passes in the few times he did play. Of course, Jarrett Garantano was the longtime Tennessee quarterback who has now left Tennessee and moved on. So now I think it's Harrison Bailey's time to shine. But he's not going to be just comfortably in that QB1 position. He is going to have a little bit of competition going into that spring practice, of course. You have Joe Milton, who is coming over from the University of Michigan, who has struggled a little bit, but he does have that good experience at Michigan. So I think that could be, that is always a good backup or a good potential battle with him, with Bailey as that number one position. And then you have Hendon Hooker as well, who was at Virginia Tech for a little bit. Now he's coming over. So you have a pretty experienced QB room with, of course, Harrison Bailey, who was a top recruit. And now you have those two guys who are coming over from two very good schools who are now going to come and try and, either get that QB1 position or compete for that backup spot. So Tennessee's definitely helped out their offense at the quarterback position, no doubt about that. And I think that if Harrison Bailey does struggle a little bit, I do think that even though one of those backups, whether it is Hooker or Milton, I think those guys are going to be solid replacements just in case something bad ever happens. So I like what Tennessee has done with the QB room this year, and I think it's really going to help them out because they've struggled with Garantano just getting offensive production consistently. And hopefully with any of those three guys, they can get a whole lot better. And I think that with Heupel's new offense, man, that he's bringing in just a very just run and gun, just ready to throw the ball any means necessary, get points on the board. I think the Tennessee is going to be in for a really good culture shock this year, and I'm looking forward to it. But let's keep going on here, man. They lost, like I said, they lost a few guys, whether it be for transferring or whether it was in the NFL draft. And they lost 2 of their running backs. They lost Ty Chandler, who went to North Carolina, and Eric Gray, who moved on to Oklahoma. So that means it's time for Tion Evans potentially to come in there. A JUCO transfer coming over, and he might get his time to shine. Or you could get Jabari Small, might be coming in. So both of those guys could be kind of a dual back system. They might try and do some tinkering, see which one of those guys can really come in and which one can provide the most. Or maybe they can split the carries 50-50. I'm not too sure what they're going to go with there in Tennessee. But I think that is going to be a key part, having a good running game as well. Because Eric Gray, he had moments of where he looked like he was going to be a star, but then he was quiet for a few games. So hopefully you can get a better, more productive output from these 2 guys going forward. And we'll see how that running game can progress in Tennessee. The offensive line struggled a little bit too. And, I mean, they lost a few of their guys. Trey Smith went to the NFL. Wanya Morris moved over to Oklahoma, of course. Jameer Johnson, A&M. But Cade Mays, though, that is the key. Cade Mays is still here, though. So that is the key part, is that he is going to be your anchor right there on the O-line, and that you just got to hope that he can be there for one more year until he gets drafted in the NFL, because he is looking like a star in the making at that O-line. So if Cade Mays can really – if he can do what he's been doing for his whole career in college, just be a top, pass blocker, run blocker at his position, I think he should be fine on the O-line. Darnell Wright is also another guy who is going to be probably another NFL draft pick in either next year potentially. So you're hoping you can get maybe 1, potentially 2 more years out of these guys if need be. So it is coming to a close, but hopefully those nice recruits they've been picking up over the last few years, hopefully those guys can step in and fill that void in the next coming seasons. But for right now, I think the offensive line might see a little bit of struggles. Not too bad, I don't think. But when you have 2 guys who are going to be future NFL draft picks, it does help a little bit on the quarterback position, knowing that you don't have defensive players coming down at you trying to get a sack every single time. Because, man, offensive line play is crucial. I don't care if you're in college, high school, NFL, you got to have a good offensive line in order to have a winning football team. So I think for the offensive side of the ball, they're going to be fine. Like I said, they're going to have Harrison Bailey coming in. They got some good wide receivers. They're going to have new running backs coming in as well. So I think that overall, I think the Tennessee offense will be fine. Let's go over to the defense a little bit. The defense does need to improve a good amount, because it's tough. It is tough, man. Being in the SEC and not having, a top defense or top offense, you're going to have a weakness somewhere in that game. And that's where Tennessee struggled at. Was their defense. It wasn't the best. They allowed a lot of yards last year, about 30 points a game. But I think they're going to try and come in and shake things up. And I think that, that, like I said, they got a brand new defensive coordinator. So I think that if he can come out of Penn State, if he comes in and he can, get that team ready, get them just a new mindset, I think that'll really help them out. But it did hurt, though, because they lost a lot of guys. They lost a lot of guys on that defensive side of the ball. Of course, Henry To'oTo'o left Tennessee, and he moved on over to the rival in the University of Alabama, kept it in the SEC, but moved over to our guy, Coach Kevin Bull Jones' favorite team. Going to go be a star over there, I'm sure. Also, Quavarius Crouch left to go to Michigan State. So you've lost guys who were your stars, who led the teams in tackles. So you're losing a lot of production. That's just at the linebacking core. So you're losing 2 or 3 guys who really helped out that Tennessee team who are no longer there. But it's all right, though, because they did pick up a few guys from the transfer portal who I think could help them out at that linebacking core. You got Jawan Mitchell coming over from Texas, who's hopefully going to help out. I think that he should really have a good season coming in. And I think that it's not going to be a great season for the linebacking core just because you lost so much production with those guys who transferred over. But I think it should be fine. It should be formidable. And I think they should be they're not going to be, sinking. They're going to be fine. They're going to keep their head above water this season. And then just a little bit before we wrap things up here, they need to help out with their secondary. They only had 5 interceptions last year. So they really need to step that up, get their production game up. And I think that if the safeties, if the cornerbacks keep doing their jobs, I think that they should be fine. Like I said, you got some really good talents over there. You got Jalen McCullough, Trevon Flowers. Those guys are fine. And then at the cornerback position, you got Alontae Taylor, who could be an all-SEC performer as long as he stays healthy and on the field. I think they should be fine. So I think that overall, just as a final wrap up here, I think Tennessee is going to be fine this year. I expect them to do better than last year, of course, because we know they came out the gates nice, and then they went on a pretty mean losing streak. But I think that this year it's going to be fine, because when I looked at their schedule, it is going to be tough, but they do have a few games they could win in there. Of course, they're going to face Florida, they're going to face Alabama and Georgia. Those are all going to be really tough games. But I think that they have the potential to win. All the other games that could be on their schedule potentially. They face Missouri, who might be tough, but I could see Tennessee potentially beating Missouri as long as everything stays on track. And then they face a few smaller schools, which they didn't have the option to do last year, of course, with the all SEC schedule. So that's really going to help out the Vols program, get them some more wins, and just get the guys some more confidence, because last year it wasn't pretty. Like I said, they had a whole new culture shift. They had a lot of new coaches come in, a lot of players leave, a lot of new ones come in, and a lot of young guys trying to step up and prove their worth. So I think that overall, I think Tennessee's going to have a very good year. I don't expect the national championship or nothing. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But I do expect a better performance. I expect them to grow, and I could see them getting a few more wins this year. And I think that, hey, that's all you can ask for as a Vols fan. Am I right, Jeremiah? Do you just want just something better?
Absolutely. That's what we're looking for here. And, I think that one of the main things that we're looking for coming into this new season, with a new coach, new systems being put into place, plenty of new players coming out of high school into the team, and plenty of seniors returning and, looking to lock in everything so they can move on to that highest level in the NFL. We're looking for consistency. I want to see consistent play, because one thing as a Volunteers fan that we have felt is lacking with some of the other coaches we've had is consistency. And, we love the hype train. We had some really big hype train, coaches come and go in the last, 10, 20 years. But what we were missing, and when you're watching the game, and this is what any Vol fan will tell you, is that the first 2 quarters and the second 2 quarters of the game often seem like 2 different teams playing. Now, sometimes that goes in our advantage, where the first 2 quarters were like, what are these guys doing? And they come back out of, after the half, and they just crush it. And then as we saw a couple years ago when they lost their opening game to, a team that, was it Georgia State?
Yeah, Georgia State, I believe. Georgia State.
Sure. Yeah, and it's like, when you saw that, I watched a team go real soft at the first 2 quarters and then try to come back in the second 2 quarters and show them what they really could do, which they had a really great, idea, but the Vols, we've seen inconsistency in the first half and the second half a lot throughout my entire time watching them, where I want to see Josh Heupel come in there, put consistent football mechanics down on the offense and defense side. It's okay if it's a little boring comparatively, as long as we are getting production. I want to see production. I want to see us getting into the red zone much more often than we did last season. And I just want to see us keep moving. So with all of those things, make sure if you're a Vols fan, tell us what you would like to see, because we cover all the teams, but we also dive deep. If you haven't seen our specific video about the Vols' new coach, Josh Heupel, jump over to our page either on Facebook, on YouTube, or even on Twitch, and you can watch our video from just a couple weeks ago where we broke down everything about Josh Heupel, the new Tennessee head coach. Well, if you are watching, thank you so much. And if you love podcasts, jump over and listen to our podcast over anywhere that you listen, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can find us. Just look up 100 Yards of Football. And thank you so much for sharing our links to our podcast. Every time that you share your link to our podcast with one of your friends, family, or over onto your other social networks, we get a lot of responses. And you've been helping us to grow our audience on our podcast relentlessly. Here's what we look like over on Apple Podcasts. So keep listening, keep watching, and let us know what you would like to see. We put a new podcast out pretty much every day. So thank you so much, Mr. Landers, for breaking down the Tennessee Volunteers team. And we look forward to giving another team preview here in just a moment on another live show. We'll see you in just a second.